Imagine, if you will, the next Smash Bros. Game is coming out on the Nintendo Wii phone. As we always do, we wait anxiously for the next newcomer to be revealed. People were really disappointed with the last one. Seriously, who wanted Ennard? And finally, as we expected, at the end of a Nintendo Direct, we see those all too familiar slashes, but done in like a cute new way. Mario's getting completely torn apart as usual. Things are looking bad for the Italian plumber. But just as the villain is about to seal his fate, an eagle is heard. Suddenly, from the shadows, a silhouetted man takes out the villain from behind in a PG way. Mario gets back to his knees and nods his head in appreciation. The man reaches his hand out and a look of both surprise and hope fills Mario's stupid face.
The liberation of Roma has begun.
Hey-ho! You're watching part 3 in a series of videos where I go over each mainline Assassin's Creed game. If you want to see what I thought about the first two, there's a link in the description to the playlist. That or the top right of the screen here. If you've already seen them or just don't care, let's get down to business. So you've already seen the title and are potentially unhappy with me. The rumors are true. I'm not a big fan of Brotherhood. To give my thesis ahead of time, I think it's a game that's at best done before it gets good, and at worst a bloated completionist nightmare. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's give some background. After completion of AC2, Ubisoft got to work on AC3. But not only that, they had dollar signs in their eyes. 2 was a smash hit, and they wanted to capitalize on that as hard as they could. 3 was planned on being set in the American Revolutionary War, but they felt like they still had something good going with Ezio. So they began work on Brotherhood, as well as a 3DS game called Lost Legacy. We'll get to that one when we get to it. 3 was set to release the last of them, so first, Brotherhood was up to bat. Came out in 2010, just 1 year after AC2. Because 2 was beloved by many, expectations were high. And to the majority of people, it delivered. It's widely regarded as the best of them all. I mean, so are the last 2, but this one might hold that title the very most. Doing what most sequels to great sequels do, and simply optimizing further. It's a fan favorite. But I'm different. I'm special. Let's get into it. Just as 2 did, Brotherhood begins right where the last one left off. Although this time we begin from Ezio's perspective rather than Desmond's. So, last we left off, Rodrigo Borgia got his ass beat, and Minerva, a quote-unquote god, revealed a lot of stuff about ancient history that I don't care to repeat. After getting ghosted by the goddess, Ezio leaves the vault, only to see that Rodrigo left with his tail between his legs, and Uncle Mario arrived on scene to help you escape. While running, it's revealed that the stab Rodrigo gave us was mostly blocked by Altair's armor, which makes it even worse because he didn't even bother to make sure he was fully stabbed before just walking away. You fight a few guys on your way out. The combat at the time seems basically the same, with the addition of the enemy's health bar blinking when they're about to attack. But aside from that and a quick reintroduction to parkour, there's not much to go over for this part. After getting to the top of a tower, they contemplate tossing the apple into a river to cast it away. But they eventually decide that that's kind of a terrible idea and just leave Rome with it. They arrive back at Monteriggioni, a job well done. Everyone seems very happy to see Ezio. I guess he's become a bit of a local celebrity off-screen. Before anything big happens, it's best that we wind down a bit and do some not-so-dangerous work for a change. First, we help a lady carry a box of flowers over to the big house. Next, you help wrangle one of Mario's precious horses. Then you help the town's defense optimize its cannons. Man, I am so helpful around here. Everyone is so lucky to have me. Hey! I'm having a monologue over here. God, everyone is so selfish. Getting back home, we meet with Caterina Sforza, who wishes to ally forces to protect the people of Forli. Easy enough, we have the resources. The assassins have a group meeting to debrief what happened at the Vatican, including the part where Ezio spared Rodrigo, much to Machiavelli's protest, and I can't really blame him. As I said in the last video, that was a really dumb idea. He decides that he'll go back to Rome and finish the job, and he promptly leaves. I don't know if he'll do any good. I've never even seen him hold a sword before. Whatever, there's no time to worry about that. It's time to have sexual sex with your wiener out and stuff. Whoa, freaky. Turns out the town is being attacked. Whoever's doing it is far too strong for this measly villa to handle. The best that can be done is to hold them off while the townspeople evacuate. Mario's got the apple and will keep it safe while we go to the front lines. Once making it to the town walls, we have to use the cannons to take out the forces incoming. While very cinematic and impressive, this part's kinda boring. All it is aim, shoot, wait for the guy to reload the cannon, repeat. But once that's done, the front gate bursts open, revealing that Mario's been worn down by the enemy. And who is that enemy, you ask?
I know you're there, Ezio! The Pope told me about you and your little group of assassins.
Oh well, look what happened, Ezio! This guy got the apple too. He tries stopping them from killing Mario, but unfortunately... While Mario died instantly, Ezio was only incapacitated from getting shot. He's back on his feet pretty quick. He's too weak to fight for long, so after pushing through a few enemies, he escapes with the other citizens through a tunnel that was made behind the statue of Altair. Once escaped, Ezio tells his mother and sister to ride to their hometown of Florence, while he goes back to Rome. He rides for a while, but eventually his wounds catch up with him and he's out. Before we can find out what happens, we jump over to the present with Desmond and co. So where did we leave off with them? The assassin hideout got attacked by Abstergo and they were forced to retreat. So Desmond went back in the Animus on the truck to pass the time. But the ride's over. They're at their new hideout, Monteriggioni. The current goal is to find wherever the apple ended up. That's why we're still with Ezio instead of moving on to the next ancestor. But before that, it's time to set up shop. The way to the sanctuary is blocked off, but thanks to Animus visions, Desmond sees an entrance. Side note, usually loading screens have been either Desmond or Ezio in an Animus thingy, but because we're not in the Animus right now, it looks like this. I don't know, it's just weird. This whole part is basically filler, it's not worth noting. At the very least, they're trying to flesh out our present characters through banter. It's certainly nothing special, but god damn it if they're not trying. I'll just skip to the end. The sanctuary is reached and Desmond lets Sean and Rebecca in. Notably, there's a strange drawing on the wall, and looking at it in Eagle Vision shows the numbers 1419, 1420, and 1421, whatever that means. The gang does about 3 days of work in the span of like an hour, and just like that, we're ready to get back into the Animus. Let's return to the Renaissance. So, after Ezio fell unconscious on that horse, he awakens to see that a random woman has been nursing his wounds. She wasn't the one who got him though, it was Machiavelli. He left instructions to meet with him somewhere around here. He also left a new set of threads. Altair's armor was unfortunately destroyed by a cannonball, so this is the best option for now. Seems like we've been brought to our destination, lovely Roma. By looking from a viewpoint, we can see that it's definitely seen better days. There are people fighting, beggars everywhere, and Borgiamen patrolling. They have an iron grip on this entire city, basically a police state. But the worst part of all, the very first mission in this area is a fucking tailing mission. What? I'll just skip it and get to the meat of this portion. In the middle of town is where we find Machiavelli. I'm surprised that he doesn't immediately hit you with a "nah, told you so," and maybe put like an L on his forehead. He's a better man than me. Although it is brought up later, and Ezio defends himself by saying that Rodrigo wasn't even there, so the attack would likely have happened even if he was dead. But as the mystery man said, he was there because of Rodrigo's info, so yeah, still a dumbass decision you made. So now that you've met up, you do yet another tailing mission. Although this is different as it's just following an ally while you have a chat. Either way, it stops the action. He tells us on this lovely walk that the man behind the attack on the villa is none other than Cesare Borgia, Rodrigo's son and the commander of the Papal Army. Apparently, he's an even more ruthless leader, having killed his own brother just for more power. And with his influence over the Borgia, he's taken over Rome. Problem is, as I've stated, he's turned this place into a shithole. Most shops that you come across are closed down, there are basically no small businesses. Which is a problem because we're in the year 1500, so just about every business is a small business. Even something as simple as a horse stable isn't allowed to operate without paying the Borgia an insane amount of florins. Something should be done about that immediately. Each section of Rome has the Borgia guards based in a tower. If we take down the captain and burn down the tower, their grip should loosen in that section. And so, we do just that. We toss the captain into some scaffolding, which is an instant kill for some reason, and set the tower ablaze. And after that, the horse stable immediately becomes open for business. Shit moves quick in this town, and so do the horses. After continuing to follow Machiavelli for a while, this time on a horse, you break off and do your own thing for a bit. Doing this leads you to some strange ruins, where you're suddenly attacked by a bunch of guys wearing wolf pelts. After killing them, you decide to follow where they came from, leading us to the successor of the hidden tombs from AC2, the Lairs of Romulus. Like before, they're dungeons that test your skills at climbing, parkour, and occasionally combat. The difference is, this one's following a plot instead of just being one-offs. They revolve around this strange cult called the Followers of Romulus. You don't figure much out about them in this first lair, but what you do figure out is according to this scroll, there's a dope set of armor not far from here. Problem is that, it's Romu locked away. We need 6 keys to open up the gate. We got 1 from the first lair, so we have 5 more to go. We meet back up with Machiavelli, and he tells us of a few allies in the city that we should go to. And by go to, I mean follow this piece of shit once again to them. Okay, what is going on? I skipped a few of these missions as they weren't worth going over, but counting them, since we got to Rome, we did a tailing section, a short fight, a tailing section, a short fight, a tailing section, catching a thief, a tailing section, catching a mailman, the lair, and now we have another tailing section. That is a poor ratio. He basically just shows us how to fast travel in this game. There are tunnels that you can use to move from place to place. Using the first one takes us to our brand spanking new assassin hideout. We'll be coming back here quite a few times throughout our journey. Our first order of business to overthrow the Borgia should be to make allies. The Thieves Guild, the Courtesans, and the Mercenaries. And so we set out to do just that, ending the first chapter. All things considered, that was a pretty bad intro. The Monteriggioni part was fine and pretty cinematic, but the introduction to Rome was bloated and half of it was unnecessary. 2's intro was way better than this. But we still have a whole game to worry ourselves about, so let's move forward. So we have 3 parties to choose from at the start of the next chapter. Before we pick one though, let's talk gameplay, starting with the combat. So, as I've said, the combat appears pretty much the same, and that's because in some aspects it is. But there are a few major differences. The biggest one is counter-related. So throughout the game, you may notice that you're faced with many more enemies at a time than the last 2 games would usually hit you with. That's because there's a new mechanic called execution streaks. When you counter an enemy and it kills them, if you hold the stick in the direction of another close-by enemy and press the attack button again, you'll lunge at them and land a killing blow immediately, at least if they're in a killable amount of health. And from there, you can keep it going for as long as you want. You have to be careful though. Getting hit by an enemy will stop your chain in its tracks. I believe that's why the enemy's health bar flashes when they're about to attack. It's to help you keep the chain moving by stopping enemies from attacking. While I do think it makes the combat a lot easier, I kinda don't mind because the animations are at their best here, at least so far. My personal favorites are the ones where Ezio gets the hidden gun involved. Just a really neat idea, and it looks really cool. In terms of move addition and subtractions, it seems that combo killing was removed. At least, I think it was. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what it seems to me. If they did remove it, I assume it was in favor of the kick. On the surface, it's just a regular old kick. It can be used to drop an enemy's guard for an easier kill. But if used correctly, you can do some pretty slick combos with it. I didn't even realize this until I did some experimenting. As usual, these things could have been communicated better. In terms of enemies, there are a few new classes. The random patrolling guards on the rooftops have been replaced by archers and gunmen, which makes sense. Having someone who's eyeing the town from above would have something more than a sword. On the ground, however, there isn't much of a difference in variety. There is one exception though, the new strongest enemy class of all, the Papal Guards. These guys are tough as nails. They hold a sword and a flintlock pistol. So when they so choose, they'll strafe away from you to open fire. And even with all that armor, they run just as fast as the speedy class. Luckily, they only appear on very specific parts of the map and during certain missions. Fun fact, there's a group of them near the Castello that are programmed weird. So instead of attacking, they just, bully you and push you around. They won't go into combat unless you directly provoke them. In terms of weapons, we have a few new additions there as well. In the previous game, you could take an enemy's axe or greatsword, but you could never hold on to them. You eventually had to drop them in favor of one of your owned weapons. But in this game, you can buy a large sheath so you can actually equip larger weapons. You could also now chuck large weapons for an instant kill. It's pretty damn satisfying. Another addition is the crossbow. Previously, you only had the gun and throwing knives, and while those are still present, they pale in comparison to our new member of the family here. It's a one-hit kill every time, or at the very least the vast majority of the time. It's quick to pull out, quick to fire, quick to reload, and I'd argue it's a bit too powerful. I never use throwing knives in this game, and I rarely use the gun. But I'm still glad that this is here, it's a lifesaver. The shops are about the same as they were before. Blacksmiths sell weapons and armor, doctors sell medicine and poison, tailors can dye your robes a pretty new color, and even your cape now. But there is a twist. As I've said before, each section of Rome is controlled by the Borgia, and all but a few shops are closed. So burning down the tower where they're based will liberate it. And when it does, every shop will instantly open and each owner will go on to be rich and famous. Well, not really. That's not the last step. You see, to reopen shops, you have to buy them. And they ain't cheap either. Now you may be thinking, why would I spend my hard-earned florins in opening a shop when I could just open a few and go back to them for the rest of the game? Well, firstly, you'd be wasting so much time moving to the shops whenever you need some goddamn medicine, but secondly, there's more than one benefit to buying properties. If you recall, the last game had the feature of building Monteriggioni up to be the best town it can be, and the more you built, the more passive income you made. Well, that mechanic makes a return here, but much more involved. You receive a passive income that gets a boost with every bought property. And shops aren't the only things you could buy. You can buy things such as aqueducts and empty buildings that you can assign to a certain group. You're basically encouraged to go to each section and slowly take over. Nothing screams assassin like building a monopoly. In case you're wondering if the other maps are controlled by the Borgia as well, no, they're not, because Rome is actually the only map this time. But to make up for that, it's pretty large, to the point of needing those aforementioned fast travel tunnels. And when those aren't good enough, a horse would be nice. Horses were in AC2, but were so useless that I didn't feel the need to bring them up until the end of the video. This time, they actually play a pretty large role, as you now have the ability to call your horse over with the press of the Y button. Now, when I say your horse, I just mean the last horse you've ridden. There's no Red Dead horse bonding mechanic or anything. You'll also spot plenty of enemies on horseback as well, and there are plenty of horse stables. So you'll be seeing and likely using horses a lot more on this adventure. Graphically, the game's received quite a facelift. I said in the last video that I preferred AC1's look to AC2's. Brotherhood is better than both of them, and it's easy to see how. I mean, the environments look fantastic. Just look at this from a high place, it looks great. God, I wish Italy was real. The only gripe I have is that some of the returning characters had a bit too much detail put on their faces. Like, Mario looked a bit weird, didn't he? No wonder they killed him off. Moving back to the plot, we go to see the courtesans first. We ask to see the faction's leader, but inconveniently for us, she's been taken captive by some random-ass guy. They're holding her for ransom, and luckily we have the money to pay. But they go ahead and kill her anyway, leaving the courtesans without a leader. When Ezio returns to give them the bad news, he surprisingly sees his mother and sister. Turns out they decided to come here instead of Florence.
Ezio, we want to help.
I was trying to help you by sending you to Firenze.
Where is Madonna Solari?
She's dead.
Merda.
Claudia offers to take over. She has experience managing for Monteriggioni, and that immediately takes care of forming an alliance. Although Ezio's being kind of an asshole to her for no apparent reason, seems like forced conflict to me. Next up are the thieves. Before we enter their fine establishment, we see that the man, the myth, the legend, Henry the Tasty Treat is running things. One of the less interesting assassins from the last game. When we ask him to join us in the fight against the Borgia, he says no. Apparently, he doesn't trust Machiavelli. He finds it very suspicious that he would leave for Rome just hours before the villa was destroyed. Now that I think about it, he did speak with this weird, begrudging respect about Cesare. But those two things don't mean he's a traitor. La Volpe has his eyes on him, though. One of those eyes reports that he's having a secret meeting somewhere not far from here. Oh, it's Borgia guards. That's not a good look, Machiavelli. But then after hijinks, dealing with some of the guards, and being reintroduced to the notoriety system, we convince him that it's probably a misunderstanding. And as it turns out, he was actually speaking with an undercover Borgia guard. He'll join us, but he's still suspicious. And finally, the mercenaries, led by our best friend Bartolomeo, who we see has made a new wife. How'd he do that? Seems they have some troubles of their own. The French army has allied themselves with the Borgia, and they've been duking it out with Bartolomeo's group for a good while now. They even get attacked while we're having this conversation, but they'll form an alliance with us, so, good luck with this. With all the forces we need allied with us, we just have to wait for them to put their ear to the ground. So while we do that, let's talk about the side content. So the last game had assassination contracts and random busy work from random citizens. This still has the contracts, but the regular old citizens have been replaced by members of each of your allied factions. And it's a bit more elaborate than the normal jobs you got. For example, instead of beating up an unfaithful husband, you have to beat up the brother of the previous courtesan leader, who's been calling himself the new leader and trying to make deals with the Borgia. There's a lot that extra context can do. But there's more than contracts and odd jobs to do for side content. In fact, you can do another string of missions that are very near and dear to Ezio. You see, there's this new type of mission called Repressed Memories. Now don't worry, we're not going to go over anything too traumatic here. No, we're going to explore the relationship that Ezio had with his girlfriend, Christina. Do you even remember her? She was in one cutscene at the beginning of AC2, where Ezio and her played tic-tac-toe or something. I'm not sure, it was off screen. But if they want to develop a character that didn't get that before, they'll get no argument from me. The first memory is from before the events of AC2, and little Ezio is trying to muster up the courage to ask Christina out. Once he does, it doesn't go well, although he does make her smile, which is a good sign. And to seal the deal, he decides to follow her home. Okay, hold on a second. I'm not sure I'm fully on board with this one. But oh well, we were all kids in love once, and we've all done stupid things because of it. Also, it was a very different time. Almost makes me forget that this is another tailing mission. It was for the best either way. Vieri seems to be aiming for her as well, and he's about to get forceful before Ezio comes in and knocks him around.
You will pay for interfering. Your whole family will.
Okay, first of all, you're not even Yuri Lowenthal, opinion discarded. Second, you're only half right. She's grateful for his support and is now willing to give him a shot. Look at that dumb smile, how can you stay mad at that? There are 4 more memories to go over, but I'll save them for later. Figure it would be better to go over them in a row rather than in pieces. Lastly, with side content, you can actually leave the Animus whenever you want now. There isn't too much reason to, aside from having a few extra conversations with the crew in a desperate attempt to care about them. You can also read your emails, a lot of which are coming from the rest of your crew? We're all in the same room. Just talk. You could even check the emails on their accounts. That's a blatant breach of privacy. How do you even have their passwords? Most notable thing here is that we see some emails from William Miles, Desmond's dad. He's in on this operation as well, but he's somewhere else at the moment. After enough time, we get news that Katerina Sforza, who was taken hostage back during the Vela attack, is currently being held and made an example of by Lucrezia Borgia, the daughter of Rodrigo. So it's time to once more invade their home and rescue her. Let's begin our first major mission, which is named after Castle Crashers. That's cute. Although personally, I would call this mission, uh-oh, back to the Vatican. Oh no, back to the Vatican. We messed up. This time, we attack the area from a different angle, so this isn't the same as the last mission in AC2, and not nearly as eventful. That doesn't mean we're not seeing anything, though. Firstly, we get a peek at Cesare talking to his gang of Templar villains we'll be taking on. Then we see him get a little too friendly with his sister. Alright, I'd argue we're seeing too much. And then he leaves, killing our chance at finishing this game now. But at the very least, Lucrezia is still here and has the key to Katerina's cell. And she has no combat skills, so stealth isn't required. This part is, however, pretty annoying. You have to carry her to the cell, all the while she randomly breaks free, calls the guards, and berates you. That last one is justified, but the rest is just obnoxious. And then, when you free Katerina, you have to carry her to the exit. This wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for a certain bonus feature that I've been leaving out until now. I'll bring it up when the time is right. At the very least, it ends on a part where you have to hold the guards off while Katerina escapes. It's endless waves of them for a whole minute and a half. And once the time's up, you have to escape. That's fairly exciting. Back at the hideout, it's become clear that as we are now, we'll never defeat the Borgia. They have an entire army, we have a nice smile. What we need isn't just new weapons and shiny armor. We need bodies, recruits. We can see that the Borgia are bringing misery to the people of Rome. So what we'll do is save them, and while they're still at a low point in their life, promise them that all will be well if they join our cause of putting their lives on the line for our own personal gain. And so, a new mechanic is introduced, recruiting. When you see someone being harassed or beaten by the Borgia, you swoop in and save them. And just like that, they want to be an assassin. But that's not the end of it. You see, having an entourage of recruits isn't just for show. You can use them. There's a meter below your health bar, and when it's full and you press LB, they arrive to assist you. Could be used for stealth or combat. When you have a large number of assassins at your disposal, the meter can get up to 3 times bigger. And if you get all of them full and hold LB, this happens. It's a little OP. Just be careful that you don't toss them at a challenge too great, because they could die. If you want to prevent that from happening, you can level them up. By going to Pigeon Coups, you can send them on missions across the globe. The missions vary in difficulty, and the higher your assassin's level, the higher chance they have of succeeding. Overall, this is a very cool concept, and it's implemented. Next up, you have a mission where you have to assassinate some random guy. But I guess the devs realized that there were too many tailing missions, so instead of following someone to the destination, you walk down certain paths depending on which way the many courtesans point? I guess they were all just waiting here for you? And then you kill him. There's nothing special to it. Okay, but here comes another mission where you have to follow this random-ass guy, I guess I was wrong about the tailing mission thing, and then you just kill him. Again. And now Leonardo's here. Whoa. Okay. What was that? I thought we were going after the Borgia. What is this random dicking around? This is one of my major problems with the game. There are a lot of points where it feels like there's no focus. Like, why did those last 2 missions happen? They quite literally had nothing to do with the main plot. I get it was an introduction to the Templar agent's side missions, but like, why are these first 2 main missions? Just have them on the map and curious players will go check it out. The gameplay of these 2 missions wasn't so breathtaking that you had to put it at the forefront. Padding. It's padding, and it's far from the only time. We haven't been playing the game for that long, and we've already had about 6 missions that are just filler. You can cut them out and you would have lost nothing. And the pacing is all over the place too. I was just rescuing a bitch from the clutches of the Pope's family. Why am I dicking around now? Have some confidence in your own plot and keep it moving. The Lairs of Romulus are another good example. They follow their own story, as I've said before, but the introduction of the tombs from AC2 was way better. You're shown the first one as a way of eavesdropping on a secret Templar meeting. You realize after the fact that this was one of the tombs. It was a good way of using the main plot as an instrument to begin side content. But here, it's introduced in a mission that comes from nowhere. You're not given instructions to go to the location, you just randomly have a map marker there. And then, whoa, you're being attacked! This aspect of the game is thrown at you, not shown to you. And I think that that's just bad implementation. Anyway, sorry to keep you waiting, Leonardo. Nice Metal Gear reference you got going there. I see you're trying to appeal to me. The reason he's here and not in Venice is because the Borgia have enlisted his services. It was more of an ultimatum, really. I'm sure you can guess how. Perhaps they were impressed with that contraption that helped us soar through the skies and wanted to get their hands on some of that and more. Interestingly though, Cesare actually gave Leonardo the apple to see if he can make it work. That would explain why the people of Rome aren't all brainwashed. Al-Mualim had plenty of time to study the inner workings of the apple and was an assassin. These guys aren't like that and don't have that experience. But before Leonardo had a chance to inspect it, Rodrigo took it away. Anyway, he's been forced to make weapons of war, and he's asked us to destroy them before they can be used. He gives us the location of all 4 of them. The good news from this is that now that we're in contact with Leonardo again, he can recreate the old gadgets that we lost, such as the double hidden blades, or the climbing glove that lets us do the leap thing on walls, and a new one, poison darts. As you would expect, it works just like the regular poison does, but you could shoot people with them. Man, they really wanted you to go all out on projectiles this time. As for the war machines, the first one is a turret. These missions act similarly to the Romulus lairs, but outdoors and with a twist at the end. What you have to do is destroy the blueprints used to make the weapons, then you destroy the weapons themselves. We managed to get one with explosive barrels, but a carriage holding another one begins to escape. This leads to a horse chase before you then take control of the carriage and shoot at opposition using the turret. This is actually pretty fun, and probably the best Leonardo mission in the game, spoiler alert, but I'll save the rest for later. Returning to the hideout, we see Katerina, who's ready to return to Forli. She gives Ezio some encouraging words and rides off. And in case you're wondering, she would go on to fail in every mission she set out on and die of pneumonia. Oh well. Around now would be the point where I say that I'm ready to start speeding through some stuff, but about that, I have no need to. We're already about halfway done with the main story. Yeah, I know. We haven't even killed our first target yet. How could it possibly go by that fast? Well, let me show you. The banker, also known as Juan Borgia, is in charge of the funds behind the papal army. Taking him down would severely limit their budget. So to do this, we find a politician who's in serious debt with the Borgia and offer him the money to pay it off. Then we have him go and deliver that money, do another tailing mission for him to be escorted to the place for the money to be delivered, and put on a disguise. We take the money and do an obnoxious mission where we have to guess where we're going based on what the guards following you say, and it'll eventually take you to a party. Then we do another tailing mission and follow a guard to where the money is finally delivered and see the banker. From there we take him out, mission accomplished. That was it. That was the first major target. Done. And then Ezio sees that Claudia is capable of killing and they aren't fighting anymore. End of chapter. Even if you do the side stuff alongside it, this is a bit thin. You might be thinking that it didn't take that much longer to kill a target in AC2. Some were even quicker. Maybe so, but there were many more targets. There are 3 in this game before Cesare, and we just killed 1 in 2 paragraphs. Imagine if in AC2 you moved right to the end after killing Vieri, Francesco, and Jacopo. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not going to blame the devs for this. They had half the time to make this game. But to the higher-ups, you don't have to do that. You don't have to release this game literally 1 day less than a year later. You could take a year off, not because newer hardware is making game development more difficult, but because you want to release the best product you can. Who am I kidding? What do I know? I can't run a business. Yet. Soon I shall have a firm grip on this entire economy, but until then, I guess I'll stick to game critique. And what better thing to critique than what makes me really not love this game like everyone else does? And that, ladies and gentlemen, is full synchronization. So when you start a mission, you get a little description and the option to begin or not. But if you look below it, you'll see a bonus condition. Kill the target with a hidden blade? No problem. It's not required, it's only a little extra challenge for you. What could go wrong? I mean, MGS5 has something very similar to this in the side objectives. And when done right, they can really breathe new life into the missions. It can really rock my world. Well, Full Sync doesn't even compare to that. Instead of giving you new ways to play play the mission, it's just some stapled on bullshit. Don't lose health, don't get caught, use this specific weapon, beat it within a certain amount of time, kill the target in a very specific way, kill the target using the hidden blade within 45 seconds, wash your hands before killing the target, don't cry during the mission. And let me tell you, some of these are just asking you to make the mission less enjoyable for yourself. For instance, the full sync task for the missions where you have to not kill anyone. If you can't kill them, then you certainly don't want to initiate combat. So now you have a whole lot of waiting to do when you can very easily manage this by stabbing or arrows. Or how about the ones where you can't be detected? Now, you're probably thinking, well, it's a fucking stealth game. Are you complaining about being rewarded for going unseen? Well, first of all, there's one part that really bothers me. For both these missions and the ones where if you're seen it's game over, you have no chance to retaliate before it's too late. Hate to keep bringing it up, but I've been playing the game for over a year now. In MGS5, if you get seen by a guard, you can take them out before they have the chance to call for help. So if you made any little dumb mistake, you have the chance to rectify it. But in this game, it's very binary. If you get caught, that's the end of that. Even if you kill the guard that saw you 1 millisecond after he does, it's still a failure. This was a problem in AC2 as well, but I feel like it's especially bad here. All of that wouldn't be so bad though if it weren't for the fact that when you fail a full sync, you have to do the entire mission again. Now keep in mind, there are checkpoints, but if you fail and then decide to let yourself die in a video game to retry that part, you're in for a rude awakening. That doesn't count. In this run of the mission, you fail, you start over. If you're doing great and stealthing like a true stealth man, but you fuck up at the last section due to something stupid that might not even be your fault, well, I'm sorry, but you've just wasted 20 minutes of your life. Do you remember at the beginning of the video when I said that this game was at worst a bloated completionist nightmare? I'll admit that's a bit of an exaggeration. This is no Donkey Kong 64 or Crash 4, although there are a fair bit of collectibles. What I mean by that is full syncing every mission is miserable. So miserable. And so not worth it. Of course, you don't have to do any of this, it's optional. But the game really wants you to know when you've messed up a full sync with a big notification at the side of the screen. Aw man, you got hit once. You'll never be good at the game at this rate. Oh, what's this? You're taking your time to finish this mission? No, that won't do. You're supposed to beat this in 8 minutes. Let me play a very loud horn when you have 1 minute left, followed by a countdown sound when you're at the last 10 seconds. It's hard to ignore, at least for me. Let me just give you my least favorite and we'll leave it at that. But we're gonna need a little context for it. The first Leonardo War Machine mission was pretty good, as I've said, but the rest are meh. There's one with the flying machine from the last game, but with a bomber attached to it, but it takes an annoyingly long time to get to that section, and when you do, you realize that the controls were never really that great. There's one with a boat, and that one's enjoyable enough, but getting to it is fucking obnoxious. It's another tailing mission, can you believe it? But hey, it's not that bad. The full sync objectives for those are to not damage the flying machine and open the gates on behalf of guards you've killed. Not so bad. And then there's the tank mission. Yeah, there's one more. You see, Leonardo actually managed to build a working tank. You know, I'm gonna be honest, this feels a bit like a Huey situation. You know, where he was forced against his will, but he didn't need to go this hard. I digress. Let me walk you through this mission, and keep in mind that getting seen is a game over. It begins with a tailing section. All joking aside, there are way too many of these. When the target reaches the town, the gate closes and you have to find your own way in. You see the target and beat him up to get the location of the blueprints. You get the blueprints on the other side of town and burn it. And then you rescue 2 mercenaries because you need 3 people to operate the tank. After this, you're allowed to be seen again and have to fight through 2 waves of guards to reach an underground section. An underground section that takes way too long with a bunch of climbing and parkour. But once you've done that, you can finally enter the tank. This is definitely a first for this series. I don't think I dislike it. Yeah, I don't see what the problem is.
Do not fall apart on me.
Oh, did I forget to say what the full sync objective was? Sorry about that. Yeah, you can't get hit while in the tank. Gotta do a perfect run. Well, don't worry, you can do all 15 minutes of this mission again, can't you? I'm not prone to gamer rage, I'm really not. But this mission has gotten me the angriest I've been in quite a while. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I'm not very patient. And this game really knew how to push my buttons on that. This is a very unforgiving stipulation that you've put on me. I'm sure it doesn't sound bad, but the tank section is long. It's 5 whole minutes. If within those 5 minutes you fuck up once in tank controls, you've earned yourself a trip back to the beginning. This wouldn't be that bad at all if I didn't have to do that every time. If I had to start from the beginning of this section, that would be just fine. Hell, this would probably be one of the better missions of the game. But alas, we don't live in a perfect world. And for the same reason, this is the only thing that's kept me from 100% completing this game. I still haven't done it. Sorry, I've wasted way too much time on this. Hey, editing uncle here. So, funny story, I was trying to get footage for something coming later in the video, but to do that, I needed to start on a fresh save and do all the War Machine missions again because there are no cloud saves, and I've gotten a new computer since originally recording all this. And when I got to this one, I did a perfect run on my first fucking try. But of course I wasn't recording. I've never been more pissed off to have accomplished something. To hell with this mission, to hell with you, your mother's a courtesan. Moving forward, our next target is the general of the French army, Baron de Valois. I definitely pronounced that poorly, but fuck, I've been pronouncing everything poorly. As we established earlier, he and his army have been attacking Bartolomeo's group constantly. They even attack us while we're talking. Again. This time, however, the Baron himself comes out to show that he has Bartolomeo's wife as a hostage. If they don't surrender by the next day, she dies. But Ezio hatches an ingenious plan. You see, the French have camps laid out around this part of the map. If we go to these camps and covertly kill 20 of them, their outfits can be used as disguises. After we do that, we can bring Bartolomeo and say he's ready to surrender. And they should let us right in after that. I'll admit, I like this plan quite a bit. Reminds me of how we took out Emilio Barbarigo. So with everything lined up and good to go, we just need to wait until the Baron lets Miss Wife go. But Bartolomeo can't help but keep talking shit and we have to break our cover to fight them. While they're at that, we chase after the Baron, who's still got her. We take him out from above, ending this chapter. With the Baron gone, the French will withdraw. That should cut the Borgia's power down by quite a bit. The next one involves Lucrezia's lover, Pietro. He has a key for the inside of the castello that we need. Problem is, Cesare doesn't want anyone else to have her but him. What a pleasant man. So he sends what he refers to as his butcher, Micheletto, to kill him. This information is conveyed through multiple of La Volpe's thieves, each of whom were attacked by Borgia guards despite their best efforts to remain anonymous. It's almost as if they were informed of the assassin's plans by someone working within. La Volpe suspects Machiavelli to be responsible. If we don't figure something out tonight, he'll go and kill this traitor himself. Well, we find out by snooping on one of their meetings that Pietro is acting in a play about the crucifixion of Jesus. Micheletto is going to dress up as one of the other actors to get close and deal with him. So here we go with... half of the main story has been tailing. Whether you're behind a friend or enemy, you're following someone for a very large amount of this game. To be fair, if I am classifying following allies as tailing, then AC2 has a fair amount of it as well. But it had much more time to make up for that with more varied missions and gimmicks that make them feel less like tailing sections. Brotherhood doesn't really do that, at least not often. And again, I think that's just padding. They don't trust you to not blaze through this game if they leave you alone for too long. And they're probably right to feel that way because even with all this tailing, you can beat the game in about 2 sittings. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to do what this game can't and focus. This particular tailing mission is pretty damn long and not too challenging, which is not a good combo. Micheletto goes to 3 different places to hand off disguises, and you have to kill the guys he hands them to so you can steal them. The full sync requirement is that you use your recruits to kill them, which is fine on its own. In fact, it would make the mission easier. If it wasn't broken, that is. Sometimes it still doesn't count even if the recruits do it. I guess they have to kill them in a specific way, which I have no control over, but I digress. We arrive at the Colosseum where the play is being held. Using the costumes we took as disguises, we get ready to save Pietro. Man, this game really likes disguises. We have to be in a specific spot and move in a specific way so the other actors don't get suspicious. But once you get close enough, you take Micheletto out before he can stab Pietro. But plot twist, the Templars had a feeling we'd be here. So they brought in a backup plan. He was already poisoned by the wine he was given earlier.
I am not yet dead. I did not come here to kill you. He who is the cause of someone else becoming powerful is the agent of his own destruction.
Have you learned nothing? Luckily, there's a doctor right outside the Colosseum that can easily cure him. Because we saved and warned him of Cesare's intentions, he gladly gives us the key to the castello. But then we see a random thief? What? Oh, he was there when the villa was attacked. So? Well, turns out he's a rat. We found a letter on him that reveals him to be the one feeding the Borgia information. That makes Machiavelli innocent. So we stop La Volpe from killing him. And that's the end of that. With all three of Cesare's men dealt with, all that's left is to take down Cesare himself. Oh yeah, Rodrigo too. But before we do that, we gather all of the assassins and recruits for a ceremony. As Claudia has proven capable in battle, she's given the title of assassin. But Machiavelli chimes in with his own announcement. Ezio has proven himself to be extremely valuable to the assassins. Not only that, but he's done a good job leading them. He thinks that he's more than worthy to be the master assassin, meaning the leader. And that's a good point. Since Ezio's put on those robes, we've all seen him grow quite a bit, from needing guidance from others to being the one that guides. That's an aspect of this game that I really like. In the last one, Ezio was the one who received orders. Most of what you do in the missions is someone else's idea. But he's much wiser at this point, and so during this game, he makes his own decisions, comes up with his own ideas. The Ezio from the majority of AC2 wouldn't be able to do any of that. So yeah, he earned the title of Master. Good for him. Well, now there's only one thing left to do. In the main story, that is. Let's get the side content done and over with. With all of Leonardo's war machines eliminated, he rewards us with a new gadget, the parachute. As you would probably expect, you can activate it mid-fall and drift your way to the ground. This is a very nice addition that can help us negate fall damage. I got it a bit late in the game, but that's my own fault for waiting this long. If I were you, I'd do all the war machine missions early so you can use this throughout the majority of the game. It's very useful to reach places you'd otherwise have to do a whole thing to climb to. Moving on to the lairs of Romulus, as I've said, the tombs from AC2 were introduced a lot better, but overall, these are superior. The most notable thing here is that every one of them is in a unique location. This gives each of them a unique feel. Details like that can do a lot to enhance the experience, and the story behind them does that as well. Romulus was the original king of Rome, and this little cult pays tribute to him. However, the leaders of this cult were particularly easy to sway. The Borgia pay them good money to curse the name of the assassins, saying Romulus commands that they kill Ezio. We catch on to this little ruse early, and our goal throughout these is to kill each leader. But of course, we find those precious scrolls with the keys attached to them too. Some of them are pretty fun, some less so, but there's nothing outright bad. The final one is my favorite. We find a cardinal that's been giving the Romulus leaders orders and chase him throughout this really big church. And this guy's surprisingly good at climbing and parkour, as well as talking shit and shooting out one-liners.
My ascension takes me closer to God and away from you, assassino! Sanctuary denied! Godspeed!
I like him. It's really cinematic too. It feels like a lot of budget went into this one. By the time you're at the top, it's all dark and rainy. But once there's nowhere to run, his only option is to fight and lose. With that, you get the final scroll and the final key. Now we can go back to that locked gate and open it up, giving us the armor of Brutus. As you would probably expect, it's the equivalent of the armor of Altair. It gives you the best stats and it's unbreakable. The big difference is the appearance. This is a very loud design. I don't dislike it, but man is it imposing. I guess that's the point. You also get a new dagger, which on top of being the best in the game, has new counter animations. And holy shit are they brutal. You Julius Caesar these poor guys. They're just doing their jobs, man. My recruits have grown quite a bit since we started accepting them. A few have even managed to make it to full-blown assassin status. The first to make it there was the very first recruit, Mastodonte Silenzioso. Almost brings a tear to my eye seeing her spread her wings and fly. But if you don't mind, I'd like to say that I'm not the biggest fan of this mechanic. Don't get me wrong, it works, it's functional. It does exactly what it says on the tin, but it feels kinda shallow. Everything I've said about this mechanic is it. There's nothing more to it. It would be nice to be able to form more of a connection with your recruits. The only direct interaction you have with them is when they choose to join you or when they make it to assassin level. There could have been more to it, and there will be later on. That's why I'm saying it. The Christina missions were kinda weird. The second one takes place after Ezio's father and brothers were killed, and it's about retrieving their bodies so you can give them a proper burial. Christina just so happens to be there. The third one is about her being married to another guy because you were gone for 2 years at that point. The fourth is kinda creepy. It's about her being at the carnival, so Ezio wears a mask and pretends that he's her husband so he can make out with her. I'm Not gonna harp on that for too long, you can draw your own conclusion. And the final one takes place during the bonfire of the Vanities DLC. Savonarola's men kill her husband and her shortly after. I gotta say, Roger Craig Smith did fantastic in this mission. He's always been pretty great as Ezio, but this is probably his best scene.
Requiescat in pace, my love.
I really felt it. A+. Lastly, we have VR training. They're basically little tests of your skills that Rebecca set up for you. Fighting, stealth, parkour, it's nothing really worth noting. But there is a good reason to do it. If you complete every challenge in this mode with at least a bronze score, you unlock a fucking Raiden costume! MGS4 and Peace Walker made references to Assassin's Creed, so they returned the favor in this game. Revengeance hadn't come out at this point, so it's his inferior but still awesome design from MGS4. What a beautiful inclusion. Now, let's see if we can get a beautiful conclusion. 3 years later, we get news that Cesare is returning to the Castello. So we'll do that too. Indeed, he is here, and he seems pissed. We'll need to get inside to have a shot at taking him out. Luckily, we have the key that Pietro gave us, so we can just walk right in. While we're climbing to the next floor, we overhear Lucrezia say that she ordered a new shipment of poison on Amazon and it should have been here today. She suspects that someone took it. The way up is blocked, so we have to go out of a window in the library to proceed. And just a few meters away is the window to the dining room where Rodrigo is. We haven't seen much of him during this game. That's because after his defeat, he kinda just gave up. We already shattered his whole life's work. But after that, a ceiling nearly fell on him, he got a really bad fever, he went to blow off some steam with a hunting trip but got knocked down by a deer, he was drained of all the confidence he had just 3 years ago. So he decided to give up on this Templar shit and coast with the whole Pope gig. He let Cesare do the heavy lifting. But to say that he's not pleased with how his son's been acting is an understatement. He didn't want Cesare to attack Monteriggioni because he knew what the assassins were capable of. But he did it anyway and went on to say that his army will conquer all of Italy. Too risky a plan, Rodrigo must have thought. And it's caught up with them. We cut their funding and broke their alliance with the French. Now they're stretched too thin. Rodrigo says that Cesare's gone too far and he's cutting him off. It's not that big a deal because Cesare can just use the apple to get his way. That would be if Rodrigo hadn't gone and hidden it somewhere. So now Cesare is starting to get a little annoyed. And that's only amplified by Lucrezia barging in and saying that their dear father has just poisoned him. The fruit he ate was filled with the poison Lucrezia was supposed to receive in the mail. But Cesare doesn't seem to be too worried about it. He's the main character of his own story. He won't die from a little poison. His father, on the other hand...
If I want you to die, you die! Where is the piece of Eden?
Lucrezia knows where it is and starts making googly eyes at Cesare. But he never cared about her. Right now, all he needs is the location of the apple. And she gives it to him, right in time for us to show up. Oh, Rodrigo, you earned this, but I still can't help but feel a little bad. After getting dumped by her brother, Lucrezia is happy to tell us where he's headed. And that's to the pavilion. An art piece in the center has a secret hatch. That's where the apple is. If we sneak out of here, then Cesare might not be in such a rush, which gives us ample time to get there before he does.
Assassino!
Well, now it's a race against time to get to the pavilion. With enough skill and speed, you manage to get there first. I mean, it wasn't really that hard. Either way, the apple is back with its rightful owner, and Cesare's arrived just in time. He tries to fight, but the poison starts catching up with him, and he leaves it to the guards. In an interesting twist, you get to use the apple in gameplay now. It's very simple. You just hold X for a bit, and then... the crowd goes wild. When the guards are within the yellow circle, they start fighting each other or just get plain terrified. But if they're in the white circle, they die straight away. The trade-off is that with every use of the apple, you lose a little bit of your health. And amazingly, the full sync objective is to not lose any health. So in the first mission where you have the apple, they want you to not use it? A bizarre choice. I mean, you can do little quick fires of the apple that won't cost you any health, but it's so limited that it's really not worth it. Well, once you escape, you bring it back to base. Our goal right now is pretty cut and dry. Find Cesare, kill Cesare. And the following 3 missions are kind of hilarious. It's a loop of humiliation. Someone tells you that they found where Cesare is. You see that he's doing increasingly poorly, with his soldiers losing faith in him and the Vatican pulling their support. Then we show up and are like, "Yo! You suck, dude! Fuck you! Then he calls the guards, runs away, and we annihilate them. This happens 3 times, but the third is a little different. By then, the effects of the poison have subsided and he's cocky as ever. But the entire assassin order showed up and I didn't even need to use the apple that time. It was a fucking massacre. But Cesare seems to think that there's an entire army of reinforcements coming. I mean, there are a bunch of guards there. But then said guards arrest him by order of the current pope. And then he goes to jail. But even after such a humiliating defeat, Ezio can't help but worry that he'll somehow escape.
It was the manner in which he said it. Chains will not hold me.
It was? Sounded like normal cope to me. But using the apple, he finds out that he will indeed break free. You see, Ezio fucked up by sparing someone again. Micheletto was able to hatch together a scheme to break Cesare out of jail, which was in Spain. Shortly after, Cesare killed Micheletto. I don't even know why, probably put too much milk in his coffee or something. Fast forward about 4 years, and he's serving John III and commanding his army during the Siege of Vienna. He hopes that putting a decisive victory under his belt would win the French over to his side again. Why didn't I show footage of this happening? Well, it didn't happen in the game. They Star Wars'd this bitch hard and put important info in books and comics and Facebook games. I don't know, I just read the wiki and condensed what I got from it. I do not like it when a series does this. Nevertheless, Ezio was able to figure all this out due to the apple, and so he set out to Vienna and found Cesare. By the way, because this is 4 years later, Ezio's 47 now, but he's still got those moves. Can't do much against a cannonball though. It wasn't a direct hit, so it only incapacitated him, letting Cesare get some distance. And this is the final part of the game. It isn't quite as challenging as AC2's final mission, but it's definitely more cinematic. You're in the middle of a war zone, and it looks the part. Lots of people running, lots of people fighting, there's a guy preaching about how this is God's punishment. You even climb up 2 siege towers, one of which is in the process of burning down. But once you climb the second, you finally get to him, and the final battle begins. What do I think of this fight? Not much. There's nothing special about it. Cesare's got the same moveset as the Papal Guards, meaning he has a gun as well as a sword. He calls backup a lot, but you can get rid of them pretty easily. When you do a certain amount of damage against him, you break off a piece of his armor. Oh yeah, he says this.
I am the best fighter who ever lived!
Which makes me laugh every time. But, yeah, that's all there is to it. A normal fight against a special guy with a lot of health. And once that health is almost out, you finish off Cesare Borgia.
E nessuno ricordi il tuo nome. Requiescat in pace.
You cannot kill me! No man can murder me!
Then I leave you in the hands of fate.
Whew, I almost thought he was gonna spare him there. With Cesare vanquished, there's no more threat of Borgia interference. And no more need for the apple. Ezio leaves it in a very futuristic-looking place that seems to be under the Colosseum. And that's where it's been ever since. With that, we can leave the Animus as we have all the information we need. Well, almost. The door to the chamber didn't have a handle, so it's probable that it needs something like a password to open. But if you remember, when we first got to Monteriggioni, we saw a strange shape that required eagle vision to fully understand. The door had a pattern that looked similar to what's drawn here. Ezio was the one who wrote it, in the hopes that whoever would be next to need the apple would see it. That doesn't solve the password problem, though. But through some historical mumbo-jumbo, Sean figures it out. I'll just let him explain.
The Tetragrammaton, the 72 names of God. You see? They're all contained within 3 verses, Exodus 19 through 21. And get this, you'll like this, if you arrange the 4 Hebrew letters in God's name within an equilateral triangle, their numerical values add up to the same number. 72. I haven't got to the kicker yet. Construction on the Colosseum began in the year 72.
TLDR, the password has to be 72. So we're off to the Colosseum. There's a lot of climbing and parkour that wouldn't be too riveting to explain, so let's just talk about the important bits. Working our way through the construction of the Colosseum eventually leads to an underground passageway. But something strange happens. A new face arrives. Seems to be the same species as Minerva at first glance. But what she says is... I don't really get it. The most I can gather is that she's not a big fan of humans, I think. But before she can elaborate, we reach the... Sean mentions that this place was built on top of the Temple of Juno. Is that who we just saw? After some switch flipping, a strange pillar emerges from the floor, one that leads us to that very temple. Here's an interesting detail that I never noticed until making this video. This temple was actually a part of one of the layers of Romulus. There was one that you enter from the Colosseum and you pass by the room real quick, blink and you'll miss it. And it's very out of place compared to the rest of the lair. I guess Ezio realized that this place had more significance. The door is here, and it opens after saying 72. There it is, the Apple of Eden. With this, we've basically won the war with Abstergo. Assuming this thing can stop bullets anyway. But of course, that would be too easy. There's always a catch. So it freezes the world around it, with Desmond being the only one who feels time stop. Juno chimes back in to say that the final journey is commencing. But there's someone who wasn't invited, and so she'll be eliminated. Juno controls Desmond to activate his hidden blade and walk towards her target. She insists that this is for the best and that Desmond's stupid little human brain can't understand. He resists, but in the end, there's nothing he can do.
It is done. Awaken the sixth. Go. Alone.
Oh no, not Lucy. My favorite character right there. Oh, it's a shame. And that's our ending. It's probably the best of them so far, but I guess that isn't saying much. The ending of 2 was pretty meh, and 1's was downright awful. At the very least, this one had some intrigue and excitement thrown in there. The latter of which I don't feel was present in the rest of the game. To conclude, I'm sorry, I don't really like it. Between its extreme amount of padding, poor pacing, terrible mission variety, all the goddamn tailing sections, and full synchronization, I just don't think this game lives up to 2. It's not bad, far from it. It has many great ideas that I just don't think were capitalized on due to its short development time. If you love this game, I have no intention of taking that away from you. As always, my opinion is mine and your opinion is yours. And hey, if you think I could have done something to make the game more enjoyable, you can let me know. I learned a fair few things about AC1 after I made the AC1 video, to the point where I kinda regret making it the way I did. I don't think this will be a repeat of that, as I've been playing this one since I was a kid, but I could always be wrong. I'd say I like this game a little more than 1, but not by enough to keep it away from C tier. Again, I'm sorry. Oh, and by the way, in case you were wondering why I didn't cover the DLC, well, first, it wasn't really worth going over. And second, Ubisoft has taken the DLC for this game and AC4 off the market. Not only that, but if you've already bought the DLC for these games, they remove access to it. They remove access to something you've already paid for. What the fuck?